Hey, I'm Bacon, and I want to talk about Traveler. But here's the thing. There are all kinds of videos out there detailing the history of the game, or the different systems and mechanics, or the lore, etc. So if you're interested in any of that, it's already out there. What isn't out there, or at least what I couldn't find, is a comparative list of all of the innovations that Traveler brought to the hobby. I would like to say briefly here that Sean Driscoll, also known as Shauner, passed away last September, and this is in part in memoriam. He was the first guest I ever had on the channel, and he and I got along quite well, so I wanted to offer a small measure of respect. So let's get into it. Traveler was first published in 1977, and the role-playing game and industry it spawned was still in its infancy. I am about to provide you with an actually comprehensive list of the notable RPGs available when Traveler was published. However, keep in mind, I'm going strictly by publication date. So as a result, things like Runequest, the setting for which, Glorantha, had been in development since 1966. Now, this is a fact that was brought to my attention by Anthony, also known as Runeslinger, over on the Runeslinger channel. Please do go check him out and subscribe. And this was 8 years prior to the publication of D&D and 11 years prior to the publication of Traveler. So it's not included, right? As RuneQuest wasn't published until 1978 and BRP not until 1980. It's hard to say, because of situations like this, all things considered, who influenced who, when, and how. GDW, Traveler, Chaosium, RuneQuest all existed during a time of a broader wave of innovation in the TTRPG space. To clear up this era of independent development and cross-pollination, I decided to go with publication date. If you were first to store shelves, you were first to the named innovation according to this analysis, and I think that that's plenty fair. So for real now, here's the list of available RPGs at the time of Traveler's publication. Dungeons & Dragons was published in 1974 by TSR, Tactical Studies Rules. This was the first commercially available tabletop RPG. It established the fantasy role-playing game, and the original D&D box set laid the foundation for the entire hobby. Empire of the Petal Throne was published again by TSR in 1975, now called Tecumel, and it was based on the elaborate world of Tecumel. It was one of the earliest settings with a deeply developed non-European fantasy world. Tunnels and Trolls, published by Flying Buffalo, again in 75, and this was designed by Ken St. Andre as a more accessible and streamlined alternative to D&D. It introduced a more humorous tone and was also the very first game to consider solo play. There were a lot of mechanics that you could play just GM-less on your own, and this was the first appearance of that sort of style of play. Boot Hill was published in 1975, again by TSR, and this is one of the first RPGs outside of the fantasy genre, which focused on the American Wild West and gunfighting. On Guard in 75, and this was published by Game Designers Workshop. It was a swashbuckling RPG focused on fencing, duels, and social climbing in a 17th century setting. GDW, the publisher, is the same company that will release Traveler in 77. Metamorphosis Alpha in 1976, again by TSR, very prolific at this period in time. And this was the first science fiction RPG. It was set aboard a massive Generation spaceship filled with mutants and strange creatures. And then in 76, by Fantasy Games Unlimited, or FGU, Bunnies and Burrows. And this is a game where players take on the roles of intelligent rabbits inspired by Watership Down. It emphasized problem solving and teamwork. By 1977, Traveler was the first major game to tackle hard science fiction seriously, which distinguished itself from the frequently gonzo, pulp-style adventures of Metamorphosis Alpha. The game drew inspiration from classic science fiction literature, particularly the works of E.C. Tubbs' Doomerest Saga, Isaac Asimov's Foundation, H. Beam Piper's Space Viking, and Jerry Purnell's Codominium series. Unlike the fantasy focus of Dungeons & Dragons, Traveller focused on a more grounded vision of interstellar society, trade, and conflict. It also innovated in a number of significant ways. In this video, I'll be discussing the 2d6 rollover mechanic as the first unified action resolution mechanic in the TTRPG hobby. Traveller is widely considered to be, and the support bears this out, the first RPG to use a unified action resolution mechanic in the 2d6 rollover system. Players roll 2d6 sided dice and Players roll 2 6-sided dice and attempt to meet or exceed a target number, which was typically 8+ in classic Traveller. And this 8+ standard was brought over by Mongoose when they finally started to publish Traveller materials. So why was this innovative? At the time, Dungeons & Dragons used polyhedral dice and had a D20 system for combat, but there were other mechanics with other subsystems, and they were all handled differently. So the landscape before Traveller is that Dungeons & Dragons comes out in 74, pioneers the hobby. Combat uses the D20, which is a roll against a target number, which was inspired by Chainmail. Thief abilities rolled percentile dice. Saving throws, each class had a unique table for saving against specific hazards, and then there were other tasks that sometimes required the DM to improvise or house rule outcomes. So OD&D's approach was modular. Each game function used its own distinct subsystem. Other early RPGs like Tunnels and Trolls and Empire of the Petal Throne followed a similar multi-system model with different dice and rules for different in-game activities. Traveller's use of the 2d6 for all actions was one of the first unified action resolution systems, or rather the first unified action resolution system. It simplified gameplay, and it promoted a consistent mechanic across various scenarios. So the core mechanic is you roll 2d6 and add or subtract modifiers. The target number is typically 8+, which I've already mentioned, and this applies to everything. Whether you were piloting a starship, negotiating a trade deal, firing a laser, you used the same 2d6 roll. Period. In the realm of published TTRPGs, Traveller holds a strong claim as the first mass market RPG to present this consistent unified task system. However, there are several contemporaries that deserve mention, the two specifically. So On Guard in 1975, which is, again, a swashbuckling RPG by Game Designers Workshop, which was Mark Miller's company, Mark Miller, the designer of Traveller. It used a single D6 system for combat and dueling, but it wasn't fully comprehensive for every kind of action. And then Metamorphosis Alpha in 76 was James Ward's science fantasy RPG, and it used a simplified D20 mechanic for many tasks, but it retained different subsystems for combat and other actions. So neither of these games achieved the total mechanical unification seen in Traveller. While some war games and proto-RPGs experimented with unified dice rolls, Traveller was the first fully realized RPG to deliver this concept across every system of play. So I have a bit of information on why 2d6 is significant. It's a little bit of a tangent, but I still want to put it here. So why was 2d6 significant? The bell curve of a 2d6 roll made average results, which would be a 7, more likely, allowing for more reliable task successes than a flat distribution of a d20. The intuitive modifiers were small bonuses, like +1 or +2, could then have predictable effects on success likelihood, which was easier to calculate at the table. And someone like me, who's very role-play pointing, having ease with the math at the table is a very large benefit. You can hop out of the headspace of your character, make your roll, add it up, get back into your character faster. This was also very easy to access because it only required the 2 6-sided dice, and you could grab those from any board games that you had in your house. Did you have 2 board games in your house? Chances are you had 2 6-sided dice. So this it also allowed quick and consistent adjudication because of the low math impact. So while other games did experiment with unified resolution mechanics after Traveller, such as Runequest and BRP, as previously mentioned, Call of Cthulhu, which also used the BRP system, GURPS, Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, Shadowrun, and many others, Traveller remains the first widely recognized RPG to bring a single, consistent system to every player action. Thank you so much for watching. I will be getting into the other innovations of Traveller very shortly here. The plan is to publish 2 more rapid-fire videos on this topic, or rather in this series. So please do look for those. If you like what I'm doing, I guess you could like the video and subscribe. It is very helpful, or so I hear. Thank you for your time, and I'll see you next time. Take care.